Today I'm chatting with Anna Mathur. She's a psychotherapist, an author, and a mum of three. We're talking about all the real sides of parenting, the stress, the guilt, the pressure to keep it together, and how to give ourselves a little bit more kindness when things get hard. If you've ever felt you're not doing enough, this one is for you. Anna, welcome to Parent Unplugged. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It's lovely. I've really been looking forward to this chat because we've tried, haven't we? We've tried to get this in for a while. So I'm just so glad this day is upon
Absolutely.
us and we can get down
Yes,
to it.
ahead of your new book that's coming out as well.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
how many books have you done now?
This is my sixth
Sixth book.
book. Yeah. And this one's all about decision making and why we just walk into bad decisions or decisions that we promise ourselves we won't make. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just having a bit more compassion for ourselves, as I'm always so passionate about prompting, but also just understanding why we self-sabotage.
Mm-hmm.
Just noticing some of the little decisions so that we can make better decisions more of the time. Not all of the time, just more of the time, but just, gently.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Sometimes
often
I
it's
guess
like,
just being a little bit more self-aware about the decisions that
yeah,
we make, rather than doing
yeah.
it unconsciously.
We can be so hard on ourselves, can't we? And
Oh gosh,
we make the wrong one. We just criticize ourselves. So it's just, looking at it a bit more kindly, a bit more
love
humanly.
that. Love that. Okay, so you've written beautifully throughout your books about burnout and mental load.
Hmm.
What does that actually look like in real life for you? Can you share a moment when you knew that something had to change?
Oh my gosh, my I would say burnout has been like one of my greatest, most painful teachers. I
Mm-hmm.
have very much been one of those people, I don't know about you, but I'm very like type A personality, get everything done, do it to a high standard, wouldn't really sit down very much, would just, got so much of my identity out of like productivity basically.
Yeah.
And I think it was after the pandemic, there was just another million reasons to feel guilty and force yourself to try harder. And it was my husband grew up in Wales and they
Right.
Airbnb'd their family house, right? And we had this last opportunity after the pandemic when you were actually allowed to go anywhere beyond your front
The
door,
excitement.
and we could go to this house and basically say goodbye.
Right.
After the lovely summer holidays and times and memories, this was our last chance before this house got sold, right? And I must say, I've got three kids, and they're now 6, 8, and 10, but they were obviously a lot younger then. And I was so frazzled, I could not even contemplate getting in the car for 4 hours with the kids. I could not even think about packing. And I was
Mm-hmm.
someone that normally had like packing down to a T, right? So I just could not even contemplate it. It just felt like a mountain, like
Yeah.
Everest, right? I just had nothing in the tank. And I remember my husband saying, because he knows that I was a bit of a control freak. He knew that I would want to do the packing. So it wasn't even as if I would let him do it. So he was like, I'll tell you what, I'll take the kids out. You have a quiet house, just pack away, and then we'll come back, we'll jump in the car and go. And I remember just sitting on the kitchen floor, just crying at even the thought of it. And I think he came back 2 hours later
Mm-hmm.
and I was on the floor with a Hessian bag and a water bottle in. That was it. That's all I'd done for 5 of us for a week was a water bottle. And it hadn't even occurred to me that not going was an option.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I called my mum crying and she said, Anna, what if you just don't go? And I remember thinking, well, that feels like the best thing ever, but also so guilt filled, right? Because this
Mm-hmm.
is our chance. And it really taught me a lot about burnout, and I had to really start recognizing that my productivity, my holding everything together, my keeping all the balls in the air, that benefited everyone around me,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the cost of that was my mental health. The cost of that was me sitting on the floor, not even able to make a simple decision about what to have for dinner without going into a panic. Not
Yeah.
even able to listen to my kids playing happily because it was just I had no skin to the world. I was just absolutely frazzled. And I realized that actually that debt that I had of my energy and my resource was a collective debt to pay.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone benefited from all that I had put in through the pandemic to try and keep everyone sane and afloat. So therefore, my burnout wasn't my failing. It wasn't my fault. It was something that we had to, as a family and a wider community of my, wider family, just get together and find a way to get me okay again. And that
Mm-hmm.
was really, really painful and really hard to realize. But for me, I had always felt like burnout and being frazzled was a sign of my failure. I've not got things together enough. I need to be more organized. I need to work harder. I need to try more. When actually, in reality, it was I needed to rest more. That's what I
Mhm.
needed. I needed to outsource more. I needed to delegate. I needed to cut corners and take some of the pressure off me, not put more on. So I
Mhm.
think so many of us are living in that cycle, right? Of
Oh,
just
yeah.
depletion, and then we pick ourselves up and we crack on again, and we just that's kind of how we live our lives. But it gets to a point where our bodies are like, no, this is not sustainable anymore. We have to find a
Absolutely. So
new
tell
way.
me tell me a bit more then about your journey. What did you do to kind of get yourself out of that burnout phase? How did you begin to recover?
Well, I had to rest. And interestingly, as someone who loves work and loves being up and about and thrives on that, I literally could not do anything. I could not. I was so low, so flattened, so on the floor that I couldn't engage in work. I couldn't
Mhm.
engage with the kids. And this is burnout to its kind of physiological, psychological, like
Yeah.
messy point, right? When we just keep ignoring it. And we will get to a point and our bodies will say no more. I cannot
Mhm.
and I will not. And we had to find a new way. So I had to let people do stuff. I had to let my husband step in and do stuff in a way that I would have controlled, freaked him out of, or
Mhm.
micromanaged. And I had
Yeah.
to just let go of getting back to emails really quickly and doing really
Mhm.
quick, high quality work and churning everything out and just getting everything done fast. I had to leave gaps. I had to slow down. I had to be
Mhm.
kinder to myself. And I would say those are really important lessons for life. And I've benefited from them, like healthier boundaries of work. Don't work in the evening now. I crash on the sofa and I chill and watch something.
Mhm.
And it's respecting your limited capacity and knowing that that's not failure. That's just your humanness that if we overlook, it gets messy. And I think, I don't know about you, but so many people, we kind of feel like our depletion is like proof that we love really well and we're a really good person.
Mhm.
If our shoulders are tense and we're frazzled and we're just on the floor at the end of the day, then we've done a
Yeah.
really great job. We've parented
Mm.
well, we've loved hard, but I lost the sparkle in my eye. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
laugh.
Mhm.
And ultimately my kids need to see me care for myself. They need to see me say, I'm just chilling right now. I'll do that later.
Mm. Yeah, because
They
'cause you're the role
need to
model,
see me
aren't you, to
say,
your children?
yeah, yeah.
And they need
And
to
if
see
I'm
you set that
gonna,
example of taking that rest and taking care of
they
yourself.
do. And kids, there's not a time they feel safer than when they see us feeling content and
Yeah.
resourced and the sparkle in our eye where we can laugh and we can be present, because we can't be present when we're frazzled. We're in brace position. So I started realizing that actually, if I wanted to love well, I needed to care for myself too,
Mhm.
in the big
Okay.
ways and little ways.
Yeah. So I think so many women are experiencing this, aren't they? And they're feeling like they're quietly failing behind closed
Hmm.
doors. What would you say to any mums that are listening who feel like they can't keep it together?
You can't keep it together because you're trying to keep too much stuff together. You're
Mhm.
dropping balls because you're juggling too much. The reason you're finding it hard is because it is actually hard. It's not because you're
Mhm.
failing or you're not strong enough or you've not got all the right hacks and systems. It's just that you're one person with limited resource. And I would say, if you haven't laughed in a while, if you sit down and you feel guilty or you feel like itchy, like, oh, damn, there's so many things I should be doing. If you get a message from a friend and you look at it and you think, that's just another thing I've got to do now, great.
Mhm.
And everything just feels hard and everything feels stressful and you're going from chill to screaming your head off in like zero point 0.2 seconds. I would say what that is showing you is that you're frazzled. You've got no buffer. You've
Mhm.
got no ability to take a little breather, to take a break and think, I wonder how I actually want to respond in this minute instead of shouting.
Yeah.
What would be the right thing to do? What decision do I want to make that's in line with my values? Like, we cannot access that when we're burnt out and we're frazzled.
No.
So I say to people, start noticing what those little signs are for you that you're living in that state of depletion, and
Mhm.
start really challenging what you think about rest and what your relationship is with it. Because
Mhm.
if you feel guilty or if you feel like it's selfish or indulgent, those are like big red flags.
Right. Okay, well, that's good to know because I think exactly that. It's kind of hard to have the awareness, isn't it, to sometimes stop in the tracks
Mm,
and recognize those little micro moments that you might be feeling overwhelmed and burned out. We just have this constant overwhelming guilt that we're not doing enough and feeling like if we are burning ourselves out, then that's a job well done.
yeah.
That kind of conscious piece to your personality where you feel like you need to get everything done, even if it's at your expense.
Mm. Yeah, to just start to be aware of that and start to recognize what the cost is, right? Because you might get a ton of, like yesterday, I got an enormous amount of stuff done, right? I
Yeah.
before 7 a.m., Karis, I had done a load of journaling, spiritual practice, written like pages of journaling. I'd done a workout, I'd had a shower, I'd like done my makeup, and the kids got up, sorted them out. I saw clients, I did a podcast, I wrote a newsletter. I literally did so much stuff, right?
Yeah.
Got to the time that I needed to do the pickup. I hadn't eaten.
Right.
I had not eaten lunch. I'd completely forgotten about lunch. There was no space for lunch. I think I hadn't brushed my teeth. What else was there? Oh my gosh, I love drinking water, because if you're dehydrated, your body's in distress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a water drinker because I'm like, this is one thing I can really do to help myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was dehydrated. I'd hardly had any water. I got to the school gates. I felt like I'd just come off another planet. I'd like barreled from work mode into kid mode, and it took me a while to change gear. I was snappy. I was stressed. I just couldn't be present. And I certainly didn't have a sense of humor. And I think, right, on the surface, we see this in each other, right? We see this productivity, we applaud it, we go, oh my gosh, like you're Superman, look at what you've done, this is
Yeah.
amazing. But what we often don't see or acknowledge in ourselves is the actual cost, the flip side of that,
Mm-hmm.
which is there, and it's not
Yeah.
pretty. And it means that we're less likely to parent in the way that we're actually proud of. We can't be present with our kids
Mm-hmm.
because we're just like, our nervous system is on high alert. We can't chill. We can't sleep easily because our brain is like running at 100 miles an hour. We've got
Mm-hmm.
cortisol and adrenaline searing around our body. It's not pretty. It looks
Yeah.
good. We ticks loads of boxes, but at what cost, really?
Yeah. And it doesn't feel good, does it? And it's that feeling
No.
inside as well.
Yeah.
So give me some examples then. So say the kids are screaming, the house is chaos. What does it actually look like in the moment? How do you take those moments for yourself where you become self-aware and you recognize that you need a break? Like you say, you haven't had lunch, you need that water. How do we take
Yeah.
these moments where we refuel ourselves rather than just fueling everyone else?
Right. Do you know what one of my tips is it sounds really counterintuitive and on the surface it sounds quite stressful. So you're going to have to bear with me. Imagine you've got another child, right? I've already got
Yeah.
3. So that sounds like, why would I do that? But the reality is that other child is you. You are that
Yeah.
other child. You are that other being that has needs, that is thirsty, that is hungry, that is tired, that needs a hug, that needs a snack, that needs reduced demands, that's had a busy
Hmm.
day, that needs to chill. Like, we do that for our kids. We're mindful of all of those things. And actually, we can think, well, that just sounds like another load of hard work. But if I don't think of it like that, if I don't think, right, what
Hmm.
do the kids need? Actually, what do I need?
Yeah.
What do they need tonight? I need to actually just break the rules and let them have dinner in front of the TV, right?
Hmm.
Actually, what do I need tonight? I need to break my own rules and, not do the washing and just lie on the
Yeah.
sofa and let my body recover. And it's so
Hmm.
actually, I think the more we do this, the more we take ourselves into account, the less like we are going to have those messy, painful moments that we just erupt and everything's, we just then need to like clear up the mess, like emotionally and physically. And I think, yeah, so it sounds like a really annoying thing to have to do, but the benefit of taking yourself into account as well, pouring yourself a
Hmm.
glass of water,
So
thinking
why
about
that
how
leads me
can
on
you
to the
make
next
things easier.
question. Why can that sometimes be such a challenge to do? Like I know, speaking from my own experience, I have quite a nice bedtime routine with the children and they really enjoy it that, we'll have bath, bed, a story. We do this sort of ritual of the golden book and things like that. But some days, just like you say, that you might have had a really busy day and you just need to cut yourself some slack. But to cut that story or cut some of that routine short, like maybe the miss the bath, why do I feel so guilty? Why do I feel bad at clawing back that extra bit of time to give myself a break?
Yeah,
Like, what's
I think
going on
because
there? How do we do that?
yeah, How do we fight that? What do we do in the minute? You know what? I think that guilt is actually often a sign that you're challenging a narrative, and that's actually sometimes even a sign that you're doing right. If I feel guilty that I'm doing something differently to kind of win back some time for myself or just take
Mm-hmm.
demand off the kids or myself, then actually maybe that's proof that I am effectively challenging a narrative. So it's good to question this. You know, I remember I bath my kids every single night, and I remember going to my friend's house for dinner, and the kids are having a great time. I was like, "Oh, we've got to go now because it's bath time." She was like, "Just bath them tomorrow." I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"What? What?" But and she was like, "Oh, I don't bath my
Like
kids every
routine.
night." I was like, it felt like this massive act of rebellion. You know, now I don't bath my kids. You know, my older boys, they can have a shower themselves, but that's a great part of parenting when you get to and they can go and shower themselves. That's brilliant. I never thought that would
I can
come.
imagine.
But you know, just sometimes even calling these narratives and these beliefs and these stories into question and being like, who said we always have to eat dinner around the table? You know,
Yeah.
I'd spent ages, and one of my kids is autistic, right? So he struggles to sit down. You know, please sit down, you're eating dinner, sit at the table. And then one day, this is at Christmas, he got his dinner and he sat under the Christmas tree and he was like, anyone want to join me? And everything in me was like, sit at the table. What are you doing? Eating dinner under the Christmas tree. You're going to knock all the baubles off. Like, we eat dinner at the table. And I
Yeah.
just had this moment when I was like, who says? Who says
Mm-hmm.
we always have to do? So it was so cute. And one of the loveliest memories is that we all just got down off the table and ate dinner under the Christmas tree. And
Love
since
that.
then, we've eaten dinner in the garden, not even a picnic blanket. And my son's roaming
Mm-hmm.
around with a pita bread. And it's sometimes just challenging those rules and thinking, what would it be like to bend that a bit? What is that actually serving us every
Mm-hmm.
single day? Sometimes it might be right, or to the main it might be right, but actually sometimes it might be costing you something, and to
Mm-hmm.
change
You're
it
so
might give you a
right.
little bit of something back. So
Yeah.
challenge
You're so
them.
right. Breaking through those kind of beliefs of our own, isn't it? That we set in stone. They're not there, are they? And really questioning that. Who says? I love that. I need to use
Hmm.
more of that for sure.
Who does it
You
serve?
also,
And does it serve us today, even though it might have served us yesterday? And I think
yeah.
sometimes we fear that if we let our kids eat dinner on the grass, then they will never sit at the table again.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, what I've learned is that when we bend the rules to give ourselves more capacity, we have more capacity then to stick to rules when we need
Mm-hmm.
to. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
it kind of sometimes has the opposite effect, ends up
Mm-hmm.
resourcing us.
So true. We're constantly told to take care of ourselves. And in what way is this possible? What about the parents who are like sleep deprived? And what if you literally are just stretched too thin that you kind of know what you need to do and what you're supposed to do? But what if the resources aren't there to support you and help you? How can we manage that?
Yeah, I absolutely love this question because, you know, there are so many parents that when I say, right, you just need to take a little bit of time or take it slowly, you'll get some rest. They're like, have you met my kids? Have you seen my diary? Have you seen my support network? And I
Hmm.
think, you know, it's getting creative. It's thinking essentially, what can we do to make ourselves feel safe? What can we do to ease the pressure? And it might be as simple as actually just even addressing how you're talking to yourself in your mind, right? Because if
Hmm.
you are criticizing, shaming, beating yourself up for really small things and big things, you know, that internal bully is going to be it's going to be piling on the pressure. You're going to feel like you're walking this tightrope of getting things right or wrong, and messing up is just going to get you this tirade of internal abuse. You know, so that's something is thinking, what would a kind friend or a maternal voice say to me in this minute, you know, to cut myself some
Hmm.
slack, to take it, just to be gentle on ourselves. So that's one thing, that internal dialogue. Another thing is, you know, it's all very well and good saying get more rest, but, you know, what if that's literally not possible and you can't actually get sleep?
Yeah.
How can you do restful stuff? So
Hmm.
it's not necessarily about sleep, it's thinking about other ways of resting. You know, we
Hmm.
run around our houses. What I do, I run around my own house from one thing to another.
Run up the
One in
stairs.
Exactly, running up the stairs. I dry myself so fast out of the shower. Sometimes I almost get like towel burn on my skin. And you think, what is this saying to my body? What is this saying to my nervous system? It is saying, you are being chased by a bear. She is being
Yeah.
chased by a bear. She's running. She must be at risk. give her more cortisol, more adrenaline. We want her to be able to flee that bear when ultimately I'm just running upstairs to get some more socks. So sometimes it is literally thinking, I don't need to run. Actually
Yeah.
slowing down my speech. It sends this powerful signal to our bodies that we're safe. So
Mhm.
you might not be able to get to sleep in the way that you need or as much as you need, but actually what can you do in your day? What can you swap out? Drinking water even, because
Mhm.
a dehydrated body is a distressed body. We are stressed just because we're thirsty. So
Mhm.
how are we feeding and nourishing and nurturing and listening to our needs and meeting them, even if it is in the tiniest way of meeting a need? I really want to meet up with my friend. I need to feel heard. I need to feel seen. I need to vent, but I can't. Okay, so what can you do? Can you send a voice note?
Mhm.
Can you ask for a phone call when the baby's asleep and do a little
Mhm.
buggy walk? What is the next best thing or the third next best thing? But it's so easy to think, well, there's no point because that's nothing
Yeah.
compared to what I need. But a drop in the bucket is a drop in the bucket. It's
Mhm.
anything is better than nothing. So
Yeah, and I guess
get
sometimes,
creative.
we talk about the drip drip effect, don't we? But sometimes we can perhaps look at the drip drip effect of compounding those small things.
Mm,
If you can have that extra few sips of water, if you can walk up the stairs,
yeah,
if you can work at changing that internal dialogue, these will all start to compound to
they
a healthier
do.
state of mind rather than just accepting that there's nothing you can do and then almost accepting a state of burnout.
Yeah. And these things are often seasonal. So there are really intense periods of parenting, right? Those early years are really intense and
Hmm.
the different seasons are demanding in different ways. But, as I said, my kids will go and have a shower themselves, so there is an easing in time of some of the practical weight of parenting.
Hmm.
So instead of just holding your breath and thinking there will be a time down the line in a few months, years, or decades where I can get what I need, it's thinking, actually, no, you need that today. You need that now. Don't wait. Don't kick the can down the road because it only gets more urgent, right? So
Yeah.
how can you just think, no, I have that need today. I'm going to find a way, even if it's small, to meet that need. And it does. You're so right. It does add up.
I love that. I think that's some really great advice there. And I know I certainly need to take that on board because I'm certainly that person that runs up the stairs and forgets
Yeah.
to drink water all day. Um,
Yeah. Little
so
things.
can you can you tell me something then that you've perhaps changed your mind about in parenting and mental health over the years from all your years of therapy, therapeutic work and the books you've written and your own parenting journey?
Oh gosh, there were so many things. What would I say? I used to put so much pressure on myself to get everything right, to do it
Mm,
right, to do my best at everything, parenting, right? When this happens, this is what I'm going to say. I read like parenting books before we even had kids, right? And I thought, I've got it nailed. This is what I'm going to do. And I think I I really took the reins on carrying so much of that myself, right? That motherhood was my job. It's
yeah.
my thing. This is my thing. These are my kids. And my husband, it doesn't help that he's often out of work, but I naturally wasn't a delegator.
Mhm.
How happy my kids were what I felt was a direct reflection of how good a job I was doing. And I think that just became so challenged so early on. I had a baby with silent reflux. He just screamed and screamed and screamed. And I took that again as a direct statement of the fact I was just rubbish. So I was trying harder. I was reading more books. I was desperately trying to find a way to bring him comfort. And I couldn't. And it just challenged my identity so much, my self-esteem, my sense of confidence. And I think I really had to start separating out how happy my kids were in any moment to how good a job I was doing. Like, because they're not
Mhm.
always going to be happy and they're not always going to like what I say or what I do or the boundaries that I
Mhm.
place. And I'm going to get it wrong and I'm going to mess up. But I think recognizing that perfectionism just does not translate very well to parenting at all.
Mhm.
Like, it just
Yeah.
doesn't. Like, and also perfect parents don't prepare a child for a very messy, imperfect world that is going to fail them and disappoint
Mhm.
them and get it wrong and ask too much and not acknowledge. It's just, yeah. So, actually, the most powerful thing that I can do is take that pressure of perfectionism off my shoulders
Yeah.
and just have conversations about my humanness.
Mhm.
And it might look like, you know what, guys, I'm very tired. I'm feeling very grumpy. I just need to lie on the sofa. Can we go and watch a film? Or it might look like, I'm really sorry I did shouting. I didn't want to do that. I was a bit grumpy and I was cross with what you did, but I wish I hadn't shouted at you. That's not what I wanted to do. I'm sorry. It looks like taking responsibility. It looks like saying really top level what I feel so that they don't feel like it's anything, to do with their fault. Or I had a very busy day at work. I'm feeling a bit stressed and I was going to say grumpy. I want them to know that it's
Mm-hmm.
not their fault. And the more I label it and name it, the less it's going to come out sideways, right? Because I'm trying to hold it together and I'm trying to do everything right and it's just too much. And so I think, just shunning perfectionism because it's not
Mm-hmm.
helpful for anyone, and just welcoming and making space for humanness, which inadvertently ends up allowing them to make space for theirs too. And that's really what I want, for them to feel like they can accept themselves.
I can relate a lot to your story there. My eldest also had silent reflux, and I know how challenging that is. And the fact that you do really end up kind of pointing the finger at yourself, don't you? And feeling like you're a failure and that you're not up to the challenge. And I found that really hard. And I think perfectionism is a big thing for a lot of women. And I think they find that really challenging because, as you say, there is no such thing as perfect in mothering. And I think we really do need to learn to embrace this good enough attitude. And I think something that I started to recognize is that actually modeling is a really big thing. And I need to model the behavior that I want my children to learn. And in that, I need to accept that they need to see me fail and not always get things right. And sometimes that's us making a repair in saying that I'm sorry that I've got it wrong, or just actually learning and accepting that I am going to make mistakes and that is okay. But trying to reframe that to myself that that's a good thing because my children can witness me make mistakes and learn that that's how they learn too, rather than trying to uphold this level of perfectionism, which I still have to fight off all the time. It's still in me and it's still a kind of go-to habit, but trying to have that conscious awareness sometimes to actually put the brakes on and recognize that it is okay to make mistakes and to accept that I'm not perfect and I'm learning in this process as well as my children.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? Just recognizing that
Mm-hmm.
we're learning too. Like, we might have been parents for years, but I've never been a parent of a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old like this
Mm-hmm.
before, not these combinations of kids and not these. And it's, I think, just having grace and giving yourself space to just find your way, grow as you go.
Yeah.
And that's really all any of us are doing. And I think there are so many parenting books out there telling us the right way to do it. And I think, it's great guidance. And I think loads of us, my parenting has been transformed by the books I've read and the
Mm-hmm.
podcasts I've listened to. But I think sometimes we see them as this, this is how it has to be done all the time, when actually, you're right, it's disappointing our children and helping them realize that they can withstand that. It's getting it wrong and showing them that we can find forgiveness for ourselves as well as ask for it from other people, because sometimes it's so easy to go into that shame spiral where you're just over apologizing and you're like constantly trying to make up to them, and you just like turn up at the school gates with extra special snacks. And it's this kind of just actual recognition that it's really normal to mess up. We're always trying to do our best. We have limited resources and it is going to go right, but it's all about what we do after. And just thinking, in really just stressful moments, off the back of it, yes, do the repair, do all of that, the reconnecting, but also don't forget to think to yourself, what do I need? That
Mm-hmm.
was a mess. My emotions, my words came out completely sideways. I am not proud of that. What am I lacking?
Mm-hmm.
What do I need? And it might be that I need support. It might be that I need another tip. It might be that I need to vent to a friend, or it might be that I just need a rest, and I think sometimes, or some space or a walk at the next opportunity, making sure that, yes, do all the repair, definitely do all of that. But also don't forget that if you were in that fight or flight state and you went full on fight, that shows that, in that moment you were feeling really panicked and under resourced and depleted. And we need to tend to that. Like, we deserve to tend to that too.
So true. So obviously you're a therapist and you're a human, a mum. How do you handle when you catch yourself falling into some of these traps?
Oh gosh, I think just to notice, to be
Yeah.
honest, because I, like you were saying, old habits die really hard, and I have big feelings just like my kids, and I think, yeah, I just take those moments as, instead of what I used to do. I remember there was this moment once, and I was just so done, and I was just feeling so burnt out, and I was standing in the kitchen, and the kids were like wailing and shouting and fighting, and I messaged my husband, who was working upstairs, and I was like, oh, you need to come down. I am not like, this is, I can't. And he didn't come down because he was on a conference call, right? And then I literally broke. I screamed, roared, like this carnal, kind of very physical, like, ah. And then everyone cried even more. And my husband came down on the phone. He was like, guys, I've got to go. I've got to go. Something's going on here. And he stepped in, and I went upstairs, and I just felt the most immense shame. I was like, oh my gosh, I've scarred my kids. Like, they are just scared of me. They were literally scared of me in that moment.
Yeah.
And I felt so much shame and self-criticism. And I sat there on the sofa crying, thinking, wait a minute, I was not okay. Right. Certainly, I was depleted. I was not okay. What do I need? Seeing it as a red flag, not as an opportunity to shame ourselves, because really, what good does that do? It just drives us deeper and piles
Mm.
on the pressure, and it drives us deeper to try harder and to, push us into that
Mm-hmm.
perfectionist part. But actually, if our kids were like having meltdowns left, right, and center, we would be there thinking, wait a minute, are they sleeping
So
all
true.
right? Do they need
You'd
a
be offering
rest?
them a hug. You'd be checking, are they okay?
Yeah. We take a compassionate approach, which is so much more useful and constructive and kind and accommodating humanness than the, what's wrong with you? For goodness sake, you're crying all the time. Be better. It just doesn't change anything. It just makes it worse. It
Mm-hmm.
just makes it just feel unheard and unseen. And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
So
that
you try to
compassionate
just
approach. That's,
recognize those moments and give yourself a bit of
yeah,
self-compassion and self-love. Almost take the same advice that you would to your children if they were having that moment and that meltdown, and apply that to
absolutely.
yourself. I love that.
Yeah,
Such great
seeing,
advice.
yeah, that little extra kid in my house
Mm,
that is me, that is tired and needs a hug and needs someone
so
to listen
right.
to her. Yeah.
And lastly, I just wanted to ask you, for the listeners today, if they could remember one thing from this episode, what do you hope that they would take away from it?
Um, to think about yourself too. I think so many of us have heard the message, or embedded, have this message inside us that is like, to love well is to give ourselves away until we've got nothing left. But
Mhm.
we deserve to have fun too. I've got a grown-up scooter. It's flipping amazing. Like, my husband bought it for me, and I
Love
used to
that.
laugh at people that did that kind of thing. And now I'm like scooting around my kids, having the time of my life. And like, you deserve to have fun. You
Hmm.
deserve to be full of nourishing food. Don't just give the raspberries to your kids. You deserve to have a rest. Don't just facilitate it to your, for your kids. It's you too. It's not me first. It's not me only. It's not me being selfish. It's me actually recognizing that I am a valuable human, part of this family, and my fun and my joy and my resources are just equally important, if not sometimes more so. Because if I'm not okay, then it's just,
Yeah. Such a valid
yeah.
point to remember that, isn't it? Is I think we do forget that we need to check in and make sure we're okay if we're going to have the resources to take care of everyone else. So it is not
Mm.
being selfish in taking care of yourself. That's the best way to take care of everyone.
Yeah,
So true.
absolutely.
Lovely. Well, Anna, thank you. That was an amazing conversation. And I think one that so many women need to hear about, just those reminders to not worry, they're not being selfish, to take that time for themselves. And I think a lot of us can relate to that kind of burnout feeling, the running up the stairs, the being so consciously taking everything on. And you've offered up some great advice and tips there about being more consciously aware as to what we need, even if it's in the tiny things, as to making sure that we're hydrated, trying to walk a little bit slower, and to almost treat ourselves as another child and
Yeah.
somebody else to take
Yeah.
care of. That was really great advice. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Well, thank you. No, it's been an absolute pleasure. I love this stuff because I have to be creative in my own life and for my own mind, my own busy brain. So I just,
Yeah.
yeah, I just love sharing these These little actionable things that feel kind of more doable than the go and take a spa break.
Absolutely.
When?
Absolutely.
How?
Well, listen, look, I'm looking forward to the release of your new book, and I have already pre-ordered, so I will be reading that. And yeah, I will let you know how I get on with it. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on your amazing podcast. I've loved talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.